Hi, this is Fran Pavley. I'm the Environmental Policy Director for the USC Schwarzenegger Institute, and it's a pleasure for me to join you all today. I want to give a special thanks to Sydney Brown and Molly Davis, and they're both USC students and representing their Democratic and Republican clubs on campus. And the USC Schwarzenegger Institute is really excited to sort of kick this off, and this is hopefully a beginning of a discussion. This is not just a one-time event. And Governor Schwarzenegger in particular has always looked for bipartisan solutions to solving common problems in society. And things today are a lot more partisan than I ever remember him growing up. And it's tough times. And I think this next generation in particular can really lead the way to a better, healthier and happier future. So with that, I'd like to spend a couple minutes introducing Governor Schwarzenegger, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sydney Brown and Molly Davis to kick off the program. And so Governor Schwarzenegger, I don't know if you could trust me to introducing you, but I thought I'd give it a try, okay? The least, the worst that happens is I get fired from my job, but that's, whatever. So I'd just like to say, Governor, I have, of course, it's been a pleasure working with you, but I learned myself early on in life, maybe with a Republican father and a Democratic mother who never missed voting, that politics could be discussed. It was a family-oriented activity, and everyone worked to try to make this country a better place. Military father background, mother, her grandfather was William Jennings Bryan, who ran for president 3 times. So a Republican and Democratic household. So always respectful of different opinions. So this particular group here, we're going to try to look at kicking off and finding common ground. So I remember, Governor Schwarzenegger, when you were running for office, and I thought, what's going to happen there? Because we didn't know you. You hadn't been in office. And I was looking at the LA Times one day, and there was a list of people running for governor, and they had a checkoff list and a chart about what you would do in different policy areas. And one chart had a question on a bill I had just passed. That was the tailpipe emission bill to reduce pollution from the tailpipes of automobiles. And most people didn't really have a strong opinion or didn't want to come right out and say it. But the question was, would you legally defend this law? Because the oil companies and automobile manufacturers were going to come after this law. And California was getting ready to pass it. And there was a lot of pressure, and it passed. It was signed into law. But we didn't know if we could stand the legal challenge. So the question they pointed to you as, and I've saved the paper if you want to see it, was they asked you your opinion on it, and you said, and it was a direct quote, "I will direct my attorney general to legally defend that law." And I have to admit, I thought, okay, campaign promise. No, you not only kept your promise, you believed what you were doing, and you talked about the real value in all this. And that was because you care about air pollution and public health. You care about particularly the health of children who have asthma and other problems with breathing because of the air pollution. You've kept your promise all the way along the line, and not just on that particular bill, but that showed me then that I could work with you and I could work with anyone. And all along this way, we found common ground and found common solutions. So you fast forward a few years later after you were governor, and your appointments to the Air Resources Board, I thought, what's going to happen there? All of them perfect, all of them online with your message. So I realized you were truly committed to this. And not only you were a man of your word, but your passions were leading you away. So you had an executive order in 2005, an executive order that looked at the first comprehensive solutions to global warming, or global climate change, as we like to call it now. And you looked at it in a broad case, and it was the most ambitious bill that's ever been passed. Well, I took a lot of your executive order and put it in a bill I had introduced because as a legislator, I like to put things into statute so that they stand the test of time and they're not executive orders, because we can see different governors, or especially different presidents, how they come and go. You had led the way on this, and we couldn't have done it without you. So having that bipartisan support was absolutely critical, because you brought with you the business community and others into finding solutions regarding reducing emissions and reducing the impacts of climate change. And what you always said, and it's true even more today, is in California, we don't have to choose between a healthy environment and a sound economy. We can have both. So thank you very much, Governor Schwarzenegger, for leading the way, and hopefully what will be a kickoff in a post-partisanship future.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Fran, for that lovely introduction. We're super, super excited to be here. My name is Sydney Brown. I am the programming director for the Trojan Democrats Club on campus. Just a little bit of background about our organization. We meet every Thursday and discuss democratic principles and are aiming to educate fellow citizens and fellow USC students about democratic principles. We also take action each weekend and do community service events or phone bank, et cetera, as much as we can. So we're excited to have you all here tonight. I will pass it over to Molly Davis.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Sydney, thank you for that. I'm really excited to be here. I'm the vice chair of the USC GOP. We typically host speakers. We've had Austin Tong in the past. We've had Fog City Smidge. We've had everybody come in and talk to us about Republican principles, and we're also super excited to host a more moderate speaker like Governor Schwarzenegger. We have over 215 members and we're growing. So thank you again for your time. And with that, I will pass it over to Governor Schwarzenegger.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for those nice introductions. And Fran, thank you very much for the nice introduction. I mean, you have been an absolute jewel, and you have been a great friend ever since I became governor. We had a wonderful working relationship, and people never understood how can I be so, tight with a Democrat. But we realized that the Democrats needed me as a Republican to sign the bills. And I recognized that they needed the Democrats to pass and to write those legislations and those bills. And you, along with other great Democratic leaders, went to work. You guys worked literally around the clock a lot of times. And we really, I think, accomplished a lot when you think about it. I mean, from AB 32, where we made a commitment, the first state in the union to make a commitment to reduce greenhouse gases by 25% by the year 2020. And then there were renewable standards to up it to 50%. Then the Million Solar Roof Program, the tailpipe emission standards, we went from 27 miles per gallon to 35 miles per gallon. And eventually we'll go to 50 miles per gallon. And all of those things, the list goes on and on and on. And I just wanted to also say that it was really great to go with you to Washington and to lobby so that we get the waiver. So we get the waiver so that California can regulate its own air. And we fought and fought and fought in Washington, and they could not understand why I would show up with a Democrat and fight this issue. And we had to argue with them about the greenhouse gases as a pollutant. And they said, no, we don't know that for sure, and all that stuff. Anyway, we took them when we didn't get the waiver, we then took the federal government to court, and we went all the way up to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court then eventually agreed with us and said, yes, greenhouse gases are pollutant, and therefore we could move forward and then start regulating our own air. So it was really, really great. And so to do all of this with you, Fran, was just an absolute pleasure. And I think that the kids that are listening today, and this is why I went a little bit more into the details, is because they can learn from that I could not have done this by myself. And the Democrats couldn't have done it by themselves.
Nope.
And as a matter of fact, the extension of AB 32, which was SB 32, then was done with the vote of 8 Republicans helping Jerry Brown to extend that period and to set new goals, to be carbon neutral, I think, by the year 2035 or whatever it is. And so I think that really it was a perfect example how Democrats and Republicans are needed in order to really get great things accomplished. And so that's why I wanted to mention that. So thank you very much, Fran. I also want to say thank you to Sydney Brown for her great leadership and for being such a smart woman and coming, of course, from a very, very smart father who I'm very good friends with, I think that I'm so happy that you're starting at USC and that you're leading this group here, the Democrats. I also want to say thank you to Molly Davis, who has been also extraordinary and comes from Texas, is now at USC, and then eventually goes on to study law. What a bright woman also, and it's really extraordinary. And I want to say thank you to Kanya Davis and also to my Chief of Staff, Daniel Ketchel, for helping us set all of this up. So thank you very much. Now, they put a program together for us, and it says that I should talk for 10 minutes. I mean, but please pay no attention to that, because there's no such thing as explaining this in 10 minutes. But I will give you plenty of time so you can ask questions afterwards. But first of all, let me just tell you that I very quickly recognized that I have to be bipartisan in order to run for governor and in order to be effective as a governor. California is, at that point, it was kind of a little bit more Democrats than Republicans, but I would call it like half Democrats, half Republicans. So therefore, as a Republican governor, I have to speak to both Democrats and Republicans, and I have to serve both the Democrats and the Republicans when you become governor. And there was a recall in 2003. And people were very upset at the governor because they felt like nothing is getting done in Washington, because they felt like Democrats and Republicans can't work together. And we had all these various different problems here. And that's why we had the recall. And when I announced my candidacy, because I felt like I can straighten out the mess, because I can really, in fact, bring Democrats and Republicans together, simply because I didn't see the other side as the enemy. I saw them as a supporting role, a very important supporting role. So if I'm the leader of the state, they have to support me, and I have to support them, and we have to work together. And in order to sell that idea, when I came out and I had my first press conference before I was elected, when I announced my candidacy, I had George Shultz, Secretary George Shultz, who just recently passed away, sadly to say, who worked in the Nixon administration, and Ford administration, and Reagan administration. Was an extraordinary guy. He was the secretary of so many different departments, and then Secretary of State and all that stuff. And he stood on the right side of me when I announced, when we had the first press conference. And Warren Buffett, one of the great Democrats, stood on the left side of me. And that's how I really did the first press conference, to show to them that I have the support of one of the great Democrats and one of the great Republicans. And that because my heart is at fixing problems and making California better and making America better, rather than worrying about just the party. Even though I'm a Republican and I believe in the Republican principles, but I realized that we have to work together. So I knew this is the way to go. And this is the way really to make people happy in California and make them feel like I'm representing all of them. And the way I learned that, of course, was when I did a year before, in 2002, I introduced a proposition which was called Proposition 49, the After School Education and Safety Act. And when I did that, when I introduced that proposition, I went up to Sacramento and I wanted to get the endorsement from the Democratic Party. And the Democrats right away said, this is a great idea. We are 100% behind it and all that stuff. And, we need that so that the parents can go to work, because 70% of the homes, both of the parents are working and the kids are floating around and they have no one in the afternoon to help them with homework. and to keep them in school and all this stuff. So they were very happy about it. The Republicans, they kind of declined, and they said, hey, I don't know if I'm into that, to be babysitting for the parents. I think the parents should take care of that and all that kind of stuff. And then I went back and did some more research, and I said, wait a minute. The Republicans are always very interested in saving money and being frugal and really making the budget work. And so I said to myself, okay, here we are. I remember the study that was done that for every dollar we spent on an after-school program, we saved $3 down the line. So I went back to the Republican Party and to the Republican leaders, and they said, hey, you guys got to save money for every dollar. Here's the study from the Rose Institute that indicates that you save money, $3 for every dollar you spend today. They said, oh, that sounds really great. And they also endorsed now the After-School Education and Safety Act. And with now having Democrats and Republicans together, we won in a recession year in 2002 with 57% of the votes and got that act passed to get $500 million more to after-school programs so that every elementary and middle school in California can have an after-school program. So just to show you, this I could not have done alone. This was because Democrats and Republicans endorsed it, and they went out and campaigned and helped me to go and put it over the top. And therefore now kids enjoy more than $500 million more than any other state in the union. We are spending on after-school programs. So there is examples like that over and over again. And I just wanted to say, when I became governor, I already mentioned what we have accomplished when it comes to the environment, but also when it comes to infrastructure. I remember I was on a plane flying with the Republican leaders and the Democratic leaders to Washington. And I asked them, I said, what are you guys thinking about infrastructure? I want to build some huge infrastructure. Let's go and build infrastructure that's bigger than Pat Brown built in the 60s. And they said, oh my God, this is huge. And I said, yeah. I said, let's do a study on it very quickly. I said, we should announce it at my State of the State address in January. And so this is exactly what we did. We got together, Democrats and Republicans, and the Democrats were all in line with me and said, okay, let's go and make it a $50 billion infrastructure package. The Republicans felt a little uncomfortable. They cut it down to 40 to 37 billion. And so we passed that. And then we did additional stuff like building prisons and water infrastructure, high-speed rail and all this thing afterwards. So I got my whole wish list that I had in the first place. But it was because of Democrats and Republicans. They went and they campaigned up and down the state to make those initiatives pass in 2006. And it was basically kind of like my campaign to get reelected. And I was reelected by working with both parties by 56% of the votes. Think about that, in a democratic state. And we did, there was stuff in there for the environment. There was stuff there for infrastructure, for levees, for roads, highways, freeways, bridges, tunnels, on-ramps, off-ramps, affordable housing, water infrastructure, schools, high-speed rail. All of this kind of stuff was passed. It was the hugest infrastructure package that I can remember since, like I said, Pat Brown. So all of this would not have happened with just me working with Republicans. We needed the Democrats to work, and we needed their brain power, because they all had great ideas about the local communities, how we also have to build infrastructure in the local communities in order to get all the mayors on board to endorse this kind of things. And then I give you one other example, just briefly, and that is when, since I'm a after-school program fanatic, and I believe so strongly in that, Bill Clinton, when he was president, put the $1.3 billion aside for after-school programs. And since his administration, every administration in Washington has tried to cut that from the budget. So I went to Washington each time to lobby. And I remember there was kind of like during the Bush administration, there was this kind of environment where everyone said no one wants to work together. It would be very hard to do this, Arnold, to save this from the budget and not to have it cut and all this. And then we got together. I remember Kevin McCarthy came in and put some of his Republican friends together. Then we had, Barbara Boxer on the Democratic side and Nancy Pelosi, and they came together and they put a group together. And there we were sitting in this poisonous kind of atmosphere we were sitting there, Democrats and Republicans, on a table to talk about a strategy, how to protect the $1.3 billion for the after-school programs for our kids. And sure enough, it was protected. So it just shows you again, I could not have done this with the Republicans alone. I could not have done this with the Democrats alone. I did it together with both of them. I said to them, I need you. I said, the kids need you. You need to work together. I know you don't get along on so many other issues, but let's find this as a common ground here. Let's do it. And they did. They protected it. When the vote came up, they protected it. And the same thing was during the Obama administration. I had to go back again because Obama wanted to cut it because he wanted to create a new type of a program for kids. And I said, no, there will be no new program. I said, this is a program that works 100%. The kids go to school into after-school programs 5 days a week from Monday through Friday, and from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and do homework, and to do, they're safe in the school, to do arts programs, sports programs, and tutoring, and all of those kind of things. We got to protect it. And again, during the Obama administration, again, I put Democrats and Republicans together. We again protected it in the budget. So it just shows you when the two work together, it is like a jewel. I tell you, and the kind of laws that we pass together then stick. Whereas when they go off on their own and just pass, when Democrats just pass something, that doesn't stay for long. Or when Republicans just pass something, that doesn't stay for long. And then they have the executive orders and all those kind of things. It doesn't stick. What sticks is when Democrats and Republicans work together. And this is why I want to mention that to you, because I think that your kids are so smart and you're going in the right direction in your careers. And I love that you guys are really involved in the Republican Party and have your own Democratic kind of a party and club at USC. But I read through your mission statements. And when I read through your mission statements, I said to myself, this is really fantastic. Your fundraisers, you are out there to kind of make sure that you get more members on board. And then you have, various different activities where you get together, you have guest speakers, you have all of those kind of things. But I didn't read a mission statement that included what is your vision? How do you want to improve this city? How do you want to improve this state, this country? Or what do you want to do to really leave this place, this world, a better place than what you have inherited, which everyone has the responsibility to do. And so what I am trying to tell you is that you should add to your mission statement of something that you're going after, because we have so many problems and we need the young people to think, because the old folks, they have not been able to do it. Think about it. For 30 years, they've been talking about infrastructure. We're building infrastructure. We used to spend 5% of our GDP on infrastructure. Now they barely spend 2.5%. So how do we build and rebuild our freeways? How do we build high-speed rail all over the country? How do we do that? How do we finance that? How do we get everyone together to agree on a package and put people to work? You guys can study that. That could be your mission. Or immigration reform. We still have all these problems with the undocumented immigrants all over America. And for 30 years, they've been saying, we're going to do immigration reform. No, they haven't done it. They're incapable. It doesn't matter who is in the White House. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican, because they don't come together. You have to come together and solve those problems together. Maybe you guys have the solution if you say, we're going to make this happen. We're going to study this from here to eternity. We're going to make this happen, and we're going to break through. And we're going to go to Washington, and we're going to go and make a proposal here and stuff like that. The same is with the homeless issue. Think about it. For how long have the politicians now promised you that we're going to get rid of the homeless problem in California or in Los Angeles? Well, you know something? There was half of them a few years ago. Now there's 65,000 homeless. 65,000, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. There's poor people. They're lying there. They're freezing their butt off at night. I go bicycling, and at bicycling by, I have my down jacket on. They have nothing. They don't even have food. I mean, we cannot continue like that. So this is why I think it would be great if you guys go and have as an additional mission of what already is your mission statement to say, we're going to go after those issues, and we're going to solve problems, and we're going to study this issue. We're going to come up with new innovative ways of doing it. But the only way you can do that is if you work together. And this is why I wanted to do this here today, because I wanted to go and inspire you to talk to each other, because you have 50% of the brain power, and the Democrats have 50% of the brain power. So you have Democrats 50% of the brain power, and the Republicans 50%. That's 100%. And this is the problem what we have in America, that they all kind of exclude the other side, as if with 50% of the brain power, we can win anything. How do you win against China that use 100% of the brain power? How do we win against Russia that uses 100% of the brain power? We can't. We are not competitive. Imagine that the Lakers go out and say, we're going to let only half of our players play today. They're going to lose and lose and lose and lose. And that's why we are falling behind in the United States. We are still by far the greatest country in the world. Don't misunderstand me. But you see, I am an immigrant, and I want to make sure that this country stays number one. And I know through personal experience that the only way we can make moves and really make progress is by working together. Don't look at someone that doesn't think like you as the enemy. No, don't do that. I remember in the gym business when I was working out and there was training for the Mr. Universe contest, there were people in the gymnasium talking about the high reps is better than doing low reps, more weight is better than less weight, to eat more, to eat during the time when you're training or to eat after it. And everyone had their debates and arguments about it. And I let them all argue. And I did my training. I did the action. And I kept winning and winning and winning while they were talking. So I want you not to just talk, but do something. Just take on a mission and just do something. This is my challenge to you today, because I'm telling you, this is where the action is. So with that, I just want to go and say to you that, if you have any questions about any of this, please feel free. This is not the Q&A time.
Thank you so much, Governor Schwarzenegger. It is an absolute privilege to hear your stories and experiences, working with members of your colleagues across the aisle. I think that it is so important that we have those conversations, and you can tell the way that you talk about it, that you are just so passionate about it and such a pioneer of it and a leader of it in some ways. And so I'm curious to talk with you about the video that you released on January 10th, addressing the American people regarding the events that occurred at the Capitol on January 6th earlier this year. Seeing the videos of what happened at the Capitol had a profound impact on me. I know that I was glued to my TV, just in absolute tears. And in the address that you made to Americans, you mentioned some pretty personal stories and expressly, condemned the insurrectionists. And I'm curious to know a little bit about why you felt the need to make that video, the thought process behind it, and if you could emphasize some of the ideas from that video that can help lead us to, a more united nation at the end of the day. I think that would be really valuable.
Well, thank you for asking that. I just do those videos from kind of like from my heart. It just, I felt inside that what I saw on January 6th was so painful to watch that I felt like, I have to go and really think about that. And what is my thought about it? And what does this mean now and all this? And then the more I started thinking about it, I started thinking about, that we have had a terrible history in Austria and in Germany and in Europe before the Second World War. And then, but it started, going in that direction before the Second World War. And there were similarities there, even though in Germany it was much bigger the problem. And there was much more hate and much more devastation and dictatorship and all that stuff. But some of the things reminded me, like, for instance, the spreading of false kind of information and lies to the people, and to kind of instigate hatred and to stir up this hatred and all this stuff that was done during Hitler's regime before the Second World War. And it ended up being so bad that so many millions of people had to die during the war, so many millions of people had to die within the country, because of executions and because of, the 6 million Jews that were, gassed and killed and all this stuff. So it ended up terrible. And I just felt like this is like what we are seeing here in Washington. It could be kind of the first step in that direction. And so this is why I wanted to speak out and said, look, I've lived the aftermath of that. I was not born during the Second World War, but I experienced the aftermath. And so that's why I wanted to talk about that and communicate that. And I was, very happy that so many people appreciated it and so many people saw the video and all that stuff. But, there's certain things that happen where you have to speak out. You can't just sit silently and not say anything. And I feel that the important thing now is that we move forward, that we don't villainize the Republicans because of it, that we don't villainize anybody. We must find a way now to move forward and to go and bring people together and to, obviously punish those that did illegal acts during that time on January 6th, that went into the Capitol and smashed things up and did all this illegal stuff. They have to be obviously punished for that and all that. But I think that we need to go and say Democrats and Republicans have to work together no matter what, and really go beyond all of that. And that's the big challenge that the new administration now has, obviously, the Biden administration.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think the video also resonates with people that don't affiliate with a party or that are on the right as well. My favorite part was when you wish the Biden administration success, because I feel that if the president succeeds, Americans are succeeding, as you said. And so no matter the outcome of the election party-wise, I really feel like it's important to wish our administration success in their endeavors and in passing legislation that's positive for the country. But I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about elections in the state of California and how they differ from other states, specifically the top two primary that you helped establish, and what you think the future of presidential elections is, and if they'll ever switch to the top two, the top two primary.
Well, I mean, as you know, that we had, and we have, in a lot of states nationwide, this problem with gerrymandering. And gerrymandering means where the legislature, where the lawmakers go out, the politicians go out and draw their own district lines. And they kind of fix the system so that, for instance, in California, it was the Democrats and the Republicans kind of got together and they divided it up. The congressional districts belong to you draw them, and our local districts, the state districts, we draw for the state legislators, and this is how divided it up. But it was all divided up in such a way that you couldn't really challenge an incumbent. So they were kind of like, because what they did was they created the Republican districts that were so far to the right, then they created the Democratic districts that were so far to the left. So that when they went to Sacramento, they couldn't really work together because they were so far on the opposite sides. So when I saw that, and I saw this fixed system, I said to myself, why do we accept that? Even though it has been around now for 200 years, but there is no reason that we should accept it. And I knew that it was a huge challenge to change that and to take the power away from the politicians to draw the district lines and to give it to ordinary folks and to create an independent redistricting commission that is independent from politics, that just does it the right way. And this is exactly what we did. And we lost it. We put it on the initiative, on a ballot, and it lost. We put it on a ballot, and it lost. And then eventually, I remember the press asking me, said, "Don't you get sick and tired of just losing on this proposition? Why don't you give up?" And I said, no. Because when I was a lifter, I never gave up. If I couldn't bench press 500 pounds, I would try it again until I could do the 500 pounds. I said, the same thing I felt like with this. We just have to try, and then eventually it did succeed. And so we became like the model state that has reformed the system and created an independent redistricting commission. And now it became the model for the rest of the nation. And I'm very, very happy about that because I tell you, there is all over the country now, they are doing the same thing. And there's now 1/3 of the districts in the United States now that have gone in that direction. Many other states have gone in that direction. So I'm very happy about that. And then we did, of course, the open primaries, where the top two go for the runoff, in November. And so all of this helped. And now since then, you see that California has moved much more to the center, the politicians. That, for instance, when I was telling you earlier, that when Jerry Brown was doing his environmental work, he had Republicans finally. When I was the governor, there was no Republicans signing on to any of that. They shied away from the environmental stuff. They thought it was not Republican. And so what happened was Jerry Brown could get enough votes from the Republicans that he could pass it. So things have changed. And now, of course, there's a great stuff where the Republicans are interested in immigration reform, where the Democrats are interested in business-oriented kind of bills. And the Chamber of Commerce, 90% of the time, endorses their stuff that they're doing. So it just shows to you that how much progress there's been made. I remember there was a time when in 10 years, from 265 congressional races, only one changed party hands. Only one. I mean, that was worse than the Soviet Politburo or Cuba or something like that. It was like unbelievable. And people didn't understand it. And since then, since we have done the reforms, 23% changed hands. So, I mean, so it just shows to you that there is tremendous movement and there's now changes, and we want to do this nationwide. But it took a lot of work to get this out there. It's not a sexy issue, and but we did it, and I'm very happy about it. That I had the vision for it, and I had the kind of sustaining power to just stay in there and to keep fighting and fighting.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. You make these issues very, very fun for all of us. So we appreciate it. I know that a lot of us, I'm trying to think about how to phrase this. I think a lot of us are comparing, the Republican Party today and the Republican Party as it was in the era of Reagan. And so Sidney Rops, who is vice president of the Trojan Democrats from Los Angeles studying political science, is curious to know that with those two sort of, comparisons, what do you believe the future holds for the Republican Party moving forward, looking past January 6th, looking past this crazy election season?
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of Republicans are looking up to Ronald Reagan, because you just mentioned him. And Ronald Reagan, when he became president, well, first of all, even when he was in California, I mean, he created the Air Resources Board. I mean, think about that. He was really fighting for the environment, because when he looked out there in Los Angeles, when he came to Los Angeles and he looked out there, he saw smog. And Nancy got tears in her eyes. And I remember when I came over, I had always tears in my eyes from the smog. So he says, we got to get rid of the smog because this is not healthy. So it had nothing to do with Republican philosophy or Democratic philosophy. It had more to do with the fact that we got to get rid of the smog because this is not healthy for the people, and I have to fight for the people. So that's what he felt. And then when he became president, it was the same thing. He went in there. He knew there was not a good atmosphere with Democrats and Republicans working together. But, I think the Irish thing helped a little bit, because you had Tip O'Neill, who was the Democratic speaker, and he was like the leader there in the Capitol, and a very strong personality. And he worked together with Tip O'Neill. And they sat down in the White House after hours, after 5 o'clock, and they started working out different ideas. But they even worked beyond all that and just said, okay, here's what I need to do. I have to attack you tomorrow so that my constituents don't think I'm in bed with you here, or that I'm just cozying up to you. So I have to be ballsy and I have to go and attack you. And Reagan did the same thing. He attacked him. But it was all kind of almost agreed upon to do that, just as much as I did when I was governor, where, Speaker Fabian Nunez would go out and he would say to me first, look, I have to go out there when I look at your budget and say that you're balancing the budget on the backs of the poor. I have to say this for my constituent. And then I said, that's perfectly fine. You do whatever you need to do. And then we worked together. He came down, we drank some schnapps after he said that, and we then smoked a cigar, and we worked together, and we got things done. And because of Fabian Nunez being a very strong leader, we got a lot of this environmental stuff done and a lot of other stuff done, the infrastructure and all this. So we worked together very closely. Reagan was a master in that, with Tip O'Neill and with other Democrats. He was a master that he brought people together. And even though he was a strong Republican, but he felt like in the end, we got to serve the people and not the party. And this is the most important thing. And this is what you always have to remember. I am a strong Republican and I believe in my Republican principles. But in the end, we are elected to become public servants, not party servants. This is the big difference. You got to say in the end, I got to serve the people. And this is why when it comes to the environment, it should not be a political issue. We don't believe in the environment. I mean, Republicans, I understand it's difficult because we get the money from the oil companies and from the big polluters in order to go get reelected, as much as the Democrats get the money from unions and so to get reelected. So I understand it's difficult, but at one point or the other, you got to say, no, we're going to go and do this because this is good for the environment. And that's what I did, even though the Republicans hated me for it. And the car manufacturers hated me for it. And the oil companies hated me for it and all that stuff. They tried to derail me all the time, but it didn't matter. That's what leadership is about. To just go and say, no, this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to fight for that. And then we got it done. And I think that Ronald Reagan was an expert. And I think this is where the action is on the end. Because remember what President Eisenhower said. President Eisenhower was also one of those middle-of-the-road kind of guys, right? The Republicans. And he says, you know, politics is like the road. The left and the right is the gutter, and the center is drivable. That's what President Eisenhower said. And this is exactly what it is. You know, the left and the right, they keep talking and talking and talking, but they don't create really the action. The action is in the middle. When the left and the right comes together, that's when they can create action and compromise. You have to compromise. You can't get, you know, I always say, if we go and work together with bring everyone together, we cannot expect a perfect 10. A 7, maybe an 8, if you are lucky, but not a 10. If everyone sticks to their principles, then nothing can get done. Because we do have different principles and different beliefs. The Democrats believe differently than the Republicans do. So how do we go and kind of mold this together? There's a lot of common ground that we can find, like for instance, right now on a national level, infrastructure. Oh, the Democrats love infrastructure because the trade labor unions, they go and get their jobs, and then you go and put all these people to work and they make money and you give them a good wages and all this stuff. Republicans love it because all these big construction companies get jobs. They go out and they can make money and all this stuff. So I remember when I was governor, both of the parties love it. That's what Biden should do now. If he does nothing else, just environmental stuff and infrastructure. Those are the two issues I think that he should really hold on to, rather than sprinkling money all over the country that is gone in a few years and no one knows that it ever existed.
I know you briefly mentioned smoking a cigar, and one of our members was wondering if you could tell us more about the significant legislation you were able to negotiate. And
you're talking about a cigar?
Yeah, exactly. And then a follow up to the question about the legislation you were able to pass in the cigar tent would be, what is your favorite bourbon to enjoy with a cigar?
Well, I mean, I think that Fran Poffley can tell you about it, because I mean, Fran went down. She's not a smoker. She came down. She says, "Let's talk about this idea about the tailpipe emission standards and all this." Oh, what is all this smoking here? This is how she always went. I mean, she went nuts. But anyway, we had the smoke, and then of course, when sometimes people came in that didn't like the smoke, we didn't smoke. But I mean, the bottom line was, it gave us a place, the tent in the middle of the Capitol, which I call the smoking tent, gave us a place where people can take off their tie, where people can take off their jacket, just sit there with their sleeves rolled up and just relax and drink a little bit of Austrian schnapps and just, hang and talk, not negotiate per se, but just to go and to talk. What do you need? Well, I need this, and that. Okay, so what do you need? Okay, how do we mold this together? Let's figure it out. And there was kind of this kind of atmosphere that was created by having a neutral place like the cigar tent, that I always told Democrats and Republicans, come down here if you want to talk or so. Just let's hang out here, because this is what this is about. And that's exactly what we did. And I think that we don't see enough of that. And this is why I was telling you guys, it's great if you kind of like meet once a week and just, Democrats and Republican, clubs, meet and they try to figure out, okay, what can we do together to solve some of those problems that are addressing this nation right now, and how do we address all this? And so I think that there's a lot of action this way, and it's a good way to go about it. I remember my father-in-law, Sergeant Shriver, who married John F. Kennedy's sister, Eunice Shriver. And so I met his daughter, I remember Maria, at a tennis tournament in New York. And so I ended up being invited to Johannesburg. And, I didn't say, oh my God, I'm going up to all the Democrats. I said, no, I was very happy that I was invited. It was like in 1977, and I went up there, and they had up there Republicans and Democrats sitting at the dinner table. And then later on, as I went going out with Maria, I went many times to the Shriver's house in Washington, and he always had Democrats and Republicans sitting there, and some religious leaders and rabbis, and from the Catholic Church, some priests and stuff, and all these different kind of people here there. He didn't look at anyone, even though he was a Democrat, a hardcore Democrat, but he never villainized the Republicans. He always tried to figure out, how do we work together? How do we solve the problems? So I learned that from then already also, that that is really kind of open-minded. And I think that's what we have to be. And I think it's just a great thing when you see people kind of embracing each other and helping each other and their friends, even though that you maybe have different political views.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. You briefly mentioned that you would go over to people's houses and there would be, guests from all backgrounds, political figures from all backgrounds, and that, you'd have to build relationships with these people. And as an African-American student, myself, who I've had the privilege of working within the halls of the Capitol, it was incredibly disheartening to see what happened during the insurrection and fellow Americans carrying the Confederate flag through the same halls of the offices that, I call my workplace. So in that vein, I'm curious, what advice you would have for minority students, first-generation college students, immigrant students, students of color, and anyone else who might feel deterred or unsafe in this hyper-polarized, world of politics.
Well, I mean, I tell you, look at your father, Willie Brown. I mean, he was a fantastic speaker. He was a fantastic mayor. I mean, he was fantastic no matter, as a lawyer, he was fantastic in everything he did. And he and I became very good friends. And I think it started out because of his outrageous outfits, not because of his politics. So we found something in common, because I always like to have something outrageous on, and outrageous rings at jewelry and all this kind of stuff. And I always say that I admire that you have a green jacket and red pants. I mean, who the hell has the guts to wear something like that? And he had this hat on, and he was like looking really snappy. At Spargo's, I remember we were hanging out at Spargo's, which was a famous restaurant here in Hollywood, and we became very good friends. But then when I ran for governor, he was the first one out there, and he says, "We're going to terminate the Terminator." So, because I knew that he had to go and cater to his party, I understood that. So this is what happens in politics, but you cannot take this personal, And so he was running around, we're going to terminate the Terminator, and all the Democrats came out, and Bill Clinton came out, and Jesse Jackson, Gore, John Kerry, they all came out campaigning for Gray Davis. But in the end, because I got also a lot of help from the people, I won. But as soon as I won, I went to him and I said, "Jerry, Willie, I want you to sit on my Economic Recovery Council." I said, "Because you're very, very smart. You know everything about California. It would be I would have a disadvantage if you wouldn't be sitting on that council." And he said, "It would be my pleasure, Governor." And he became a member of that council, and he worked his butt off for me. And ever since then, he felt always kind of like, now we have to support the governor. And he was there supporting me 100%, giving me always great ideas, how to get legislation passed, who to talk to, and all of this kind of stuff. He was an absolute jewel. And I love him for that. I mean, he's a great statesman. He's a great political leader that does not villainize the other side of the other. I mean, he worked very well together with us. You remember Pete Wilson when he was governor and all this. I mean, this was maybe before you were born, but I mean, it's like, but in any case, he was extraordinary. And I just wanted to tell you that what a great father you have. But, you know, he knows, and I know, that we can have different point of views. And I think that we have to work together. That is the key thing. And that is, I think that when you ask me, how do we move forward from here? That is the way you have to work together. It's no different than it was 100 years ago. When people work together, then they can get things done. If the people don't work together, they can't get things done. And this will be the future. And I think that in order for us to be competitive worldwide, we have to work together. We have no choice. And this is why it's so important that the new breed of politicians have to go and not just study politics, but study issues and get involved in issues, because this is where the action is how do we solve those problems? How do we solve, why is it that in America we are sometimes 34th, sometimes 37th, sometimes 40th to 43rd in the world when it comes to education? There is no reason for that. And this is what I want to do is have you guys, the young people that are so smart, to have you think about it. What can we do to make America #1 in education? What do other countries do that we don't do? Why are we behind? What is going on here? Is it that we maybe have to have 6 days a week school? Is it maybe that we need more support in the afternoons for our kids? Or what is it that we have to do in order to improve our education? So those are the issues that that are very, very important, and they need to be addressed rather than addressing how is my party getting more powerful. You can do that simultaneously. Make sure that you have a strong party, that your party wins in the next election, when the next cycle comes, and all of this stuff. That's what's going on. But at the same time, we still have to serve the people. Let's not forget the people. And there's a lot of people that are suffering, and there's a lot of great ideas out there. But if you put 100% of this intelligence and talent together, you have a better shot of solving those problems than only half.
I love that advice. And you briefly mentioned the Terminator. And we were wondering if you think that Hollywood has had any effect further dividing people along party lines. And if so, how could we begin to recover in that division?
Well, you know, Hollywood is no different than any other kind of a group of people. It doesn't matter if you're a carpenter. It doesn't matter if your job is to be in Hollywood an electrician or to be a set builder or to be an actor. These are all different professions, and different professions participate in the political activities and let their voices be heard. It's just that sometimes actors' voices are louder than maybe an electrician's voice, or a carpenter's voice, or a teacher's voice, or a police officer's voice. That's just the way it works. So people always say, why are those Hollywood people getting involved in politics? They should just stick to their acting. No. I mean, if you think about it, President Eisenhower did not just stick to being a general. He became president of the United States. Ronald Reagan didn't just stick to being an actor. He became the governor and then the president of the United States. There's many people that are coming from the sports, that are coming from the law profession, that come from the teaching profession, they come from the bodybuilding and from acting and from all of those different kind of backgrounds to get involved in politics. It doesn't mean that when you're an actor, you shouldn't get involved. You know, so I think it just happens to be there's more liberals in Hollywood than we want it to be. But that's just the way it is. You know, that's the way the community is. But I tell you one thing, I always, from the time I was a Republican, I always made very clear I'm a Republican. And I maybe had some disadvantages because of this. But when you look at my career, it doesn't look like it.
Thank you, Governor Schwarzenegger. You know, this whole time we've been talking about having these productive conversations with members across the aisle and working together, you know, towards a common goal or a common mission. Two of our members of our organization, Sasha, who's the director of our political committee, she's from Massachusetts, and Raylan Kelly, who is out of Chicago. They're both wondering what tangible, exact ideas you have on how we can promote having these productive, healthy conversations with people from the other side of the political spectrum. Further ideas about working together to find common ground.
Well, I mean, I think that it is up to the leaders, you. I think it's important for Mali, for all of you to get together and start having dialogue. And then sitting down and just getting kind of familiar with each other, and then start, talking about what can we do together to improve things here in Los Angeles. Let's try a little project together. I mean, imagine if you would appear in front of the city council, you as a Democrat and she as a Republican. And he says, we together, my Republican Party and my Democratic Party, we came together and we wanted to get rid of this and this problem, whatever it is. And here's where you make the mistake here in Los Angeles. Here's the research that we have done. And this is what we can, they will be blown away if you come not as a party hack, but as someone that is really interested in solving a problem. And we have done it in the past. I remember when we had this issue with where the city council was kind of confused about graffitis versus murals. And they just banned any kind of painting outdoors. And so there was 2 students from USC that took it up on themselves, did all the research, and they went in front of the city council and presented the case, and the city council overturned the law. And now you can do murals again in Los Angeles, not graffiti and verschmutz everything, no, but you can do murals. And so this is just to show to you, this was 2 people that changed a 10-year-old law in Los Angeles. So this is the kind of things that you can do. You pick a little project or something that really annoys you about Los Angeles, and maybe it's the homeless issue, and you just go there and you just say, this is what you don't do right now. This is what you ought to do. We studied it, and then anything they say, you have an answer. Because why? Because you studied it. You got together with the experts on this subject, did the research and all of this stuff. But that's how you move things forward. Let your voice be heard, not just about building the party, your own party at USC, but also having an impact on the community. Because let me tell you something, in the future, whatever you want to do politically or any other way, when you say that, when you use those kind of examples, you're going to shine and people are going to believe you, that you're not just a political hack, because we have enough political hacks in America. There's so many that yak, but none of them have really a way of figuring out how to get together and how to actually make things work. They go on Fox News and they say some crazy stuff on the right, and then they go on CNN and say some crazy stuff on the left. Look at people like John Kasich, Governor John Kasich from Ohio. You would not even know exactly, when you talk to him about the finance and stuff like that, that he's conservative, because he was part of the budget committee when he was the congressman in Washington. But you would not know otherwise, because he talks more like a public servant rather than a political hack. And the same is when you hear Larry Hogan, the governor from Maryland. I mean, it's unbelievable when you hear those guys talk. They can go on CNN, they can go on Fox, they can go on any news network. If it's right or left or center, it makes no difference. They can speak to the issue. And Ben Sass is another guy that's just eloquent the way he talks. So there are people on the Republican side that I've seen that are speaking to issues rather than just political dialogue. Because we have had enough dialogue. It's time now to go to work and to do the work.
So I think we have time for one more question. So I have to say that a lot of our members are huge fans of your movies, but they're also huge fans of your book. And we have a lot of quote unquote fitness junkies in our group. So we have to ask, what's an example of a life skill or lesson you learned as a bodybuilder that went on to be useful during your acting career, your time as governor, and even just in life?
Well, I mean, I tell you honestly that I learned a lot from my previous professions. And one of them is, for instance, in bodybuilding, you have to have a vision. I had to see myself as the Mr. Universe, the world champion in bodybuilding. I had to see that And then I kind of like trained and trained to chase that vision. And it was such a joy, even though the training was torturous, it was 5 hours a day, and but I had a vision, and I chased that vision, and that was the pleasure. So many people go and do things and they don't have the vision. So I learned that the most important thing is to have a vision. The same thing was for acting. When I said, okay, now I'm going to retire from bodybuilding, I want to be a leading man. I had a very clear vision to be another Clint Eastwood. He was my idol. So that was kind of like the thing that I was shooting for. And the same thing was in politics. I always said and woke up one day and this very clear vision of me being governor. And so that's what inspired me. So I think from bodybuilding, I learned how to have a vision. But the other thing that I learned was that not to listen to the naysayers. Because there's every single time when you have a great vision, there's people coming around that say, oh, that's impossible. You know what I'm saying? And the impossible is for, losers say it's always impossible. There's the people that want to just, be in this world that they have, they were born into, but they don't really have the guts to go out and explore their talent and their power to change this world. And I think that's what it needs. And I think for that, you have to have a lot of guts to do it. And you have to just not listen to the naysayers and just say, I can do it. So those are the kind of things. And of course, working your butt off. There's nothing better than work your butt off. I always say to people, there's no shortcut. Work your butt off. That's how you're going to get things done. It's that simple like that, And in acting, I remember that I learned always to experiment. Always experiment, to different kind of things, to go out and to just, have a day where you just go and try to be very emotional. And then you have another day where you go out and try to be very kind to people. And you do those exercises just for acting purpose. But then at the same time, you say, wow, this is really nice. When you go and make a day just of complimenting everybody. Oh, your outfit is really nice. Oh, you look really pretty today. Oh, this is a really studly cowboy boots you have here today. Wow, I love your car. People love that when you give them compliments. So you learn from various different, from your background and from your professions, things that really help you for everything else that you do in life.
That is wonderful advice, Governor Schwarzenegger, and that is a beautiful note to end on. I think, unfortunately, we're out of time. So thank you so much for spending part of your Tuesday evening with Molly and I. It has been an absolute honor. For anybody watching who would like to know any more information about our clubs, I believe we're going to put up a slide in just a couple minutes that will give you a bit more information about our emails, our Instagrams, and how to connect. And hopefully we can have more conversations like this in the future. But again, Governor Schwarzenegger, it has been a pleasure speaking with you. And we are just so grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you. Thank you. And keep up the good work.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate everyone who spent their Tuesday night with us. And feel free to reach out to Sydney or myself or any of our organizations if you have more questions about our clubs. And the Schwarzenegger Institute is also available online for people interested in learning more about that. So again, thank you. And we're looking forward to this being the first of many, many bipartisan conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.